Elise! Happy November! Oh, I hate beards, let me tell you. I hate them. For the first 2 weeks, they're not bad, but after that, oh, they get so itchy and irritating. But for a good cause, cancer. And obviously that's an important cause for me, so I grow it out every year. I know Midget is not looking forward to it. She says it's going to hurt kissing me and whatnot, but what was that you said, Mom? Marriage is about compromise. So 1 month a year. You have to live with this, Midget. But yeah, anyways, happy November. And I am so sorry it took me so long to get to this knife video that you asked me for, but I've been working 7 days a week. But I wanted to show you this. I wanted to get this comparison made for you so that I could show you the differences, because I have a lot of knives and I kind of wanted to take you through my journey because it is kind of confusing. So like you, when I very first started cooking, one of the first things I did was I wanted a nice knife set, and I didn't know anything about knives. So I kind of fell for this guy's spiel. This guy has a YouTube channel. It's called Pro Home Cooks. And it's a neat little channel. This guy's kind of like me, you know, he doesn't have any formal cooking training that I know of. He wasn't like a famous chef or anything. He was just a home cook, loved cooking. Him and his brother started this show, Pro Home Cooks. His brother's doing something else now, I think music or something like that. But anyways, this guy's still doing it. There's a lot of good things and does a lot of experiments. I really like his channel. And one day, I guess his sponsor was Misen. Misen. So he was peddling these knives, and because I respected him, I kind of respected his opinion. I thought at the time it was his opinion. It probably wasn't his opinion. Misen probably said, "Hey, here's $100,000 or $50,000 or whatever. Do you want to peddle our knives for us?" He said, "Yeah, why not? I mean, it'd be hard not to, right?" So I bought these, not knowing anything about knives. And yeah, right out of the box, all knives are amazingly sharp. You'll get any knife and be instantly impressed. But knives dull over time. Any knife that you see on the market that says you never have to sharpen, that's all bullshit. There is no such thing as a knife that does not go dull. There's nothing you can do to a knife that makes it never go dull, okay? So that's all horseshit. You don't ever believe anything like that. These were incredibly sharp out of the box. I love them. It took me a while to realize that they were getting dull, you know, because I believed the hype. I didn't know any better about knives, so I thought, oh yeah, these are sharp. They're going to stay sharp forever, and I was using them, and even when I'd start cutting a tomato and it wouldn't cut right, I just thought, wow, this is a really tough tomato. Not really realizing that, no, it was the knife. The knife was going dull. So it took me a while, and back then I didn't even really hone my knives. I learned about honing later. First I got some of those, you know, those knife sharpeners that you pull through and all that kind of stuff. Those are junk. Those don't really work. Those are pretty rough on knives. I had these for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half or something like that, before I really started like researching knives, actual like good knives. What are good knives? I kind of knew about German knives and Japanese knives, but I didn't know any of the differences between them. So after this knife set, my second knife that I ever bought was actually a Wüsthof. This Wüsthof to be exact. You know, I thought going in that I would like my knives like I like my cars, German. So I got this Wüsthof knife, and again, it's very sharp right out of the box. Oh, I was so impressed. I was like, oh yeah, these Wüsthoffs here are the best, you know. But sooner or later, it also kind of started to get dull, just like any other knife is going to. So then I started researching how to sharpen knives, how to keep them sharp, because those knife pullers were not working for me. And that's when I found out about honing. So these are honing rods. I have two. I'll explain why later. You want to hone your knife like every day that you use it. You don't have to hone it every time that you use it, like you use it 2 or 3 times during the day. But every day that you use your knife, you should hone it. I actually learned that off your grandpa. And he could probably tell you a little bit more about honing. I think he might be the honing master. But you want to hone your knives every day, because what's happening at a microscopic level, the steel fibers on the blade kind of come to a point like this. And so what happens when you use a knife over time, so steel fibers that make the sharp point start to bend and roll like this, until they get to the point where it's round, right? And now you've got a dull knife. So what you want to do is every time you use it, every day that you use it, when they just start to go like this, you're taking that honing rod and you're straightening them back out, going from this back to that. So doing it every day, you're going to keep those nice and straight, nice and sharp. So honing them every day is the secret to keeping your kitchen knives at their sharpest. Now, over time, they're still going to get kind of dull. So I'd say every year, year and a half or so, I kind of resharpen my knives. And I have a sharpening kit. I can show you later if you want a separate video on sharpening. I can do that later. I'm not going to do that right now. But honing is definitely the most important thing and the best way to keep your knife sharp every day. But I do also sharpen my knife. I don't think Grandpa even sharpens his knives, but you can ask him about that. But so when you're honing your knife, if you want to know what kind of angle to put it on, I use my thumb. I put it halfway down the spine of the knife, and then rest that on your honing rod on your thumb to the blade. So that's going to be your angle that you're going to hone it at, right? On both sides. So you're just using that as a guide. You don't have to touch your thumb to it every time or not, but that kind of gives you an idea what kind of angle to use. And you don't have to do this, 5 or 6 times per side. You don't have to get crazy. And you're not putting a lot of pressure on it. You're just kind of letting it glide. You're not pushing down. You're just lightly gliding it across that honing rod like that. So that's going to keep your blade nice and sharp. So you're going to see a million commercials out there with a million different knives. They're all going to say they're the best knife and blah, 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 blah. And it's all just a bunch of hype. A knife is made out of steel. Steel is a combination of iron and carbon, okay, in different mixtures. Now, the more carbon that you add, the harder it's going to be. And the less that you add, the softer the metal is going to be. And there's 2 camps of thought in knife making. There's the Japanese and there's the German. The Germans use a little softer steel. You grade steel on what's called the Rockwell scale of hardness. Rockwell scale goes up to 100. Diamond is 100 on the Rockwell scale. And then steel falls mainly between 50 to 70, somewhere in there, depending on the carbon content of it. German knives, they go a little bit softer. This is my Wüsthof. This is another Wüsthof that I got. The Wüsthofs come in at about a 57 to 58 on the Rockwell hardness scale. So it's a little bit softer, but softer is more durable. So softer is going to bend, but it's not going to chip. So you can hone these and sharpen them over and over again. They're very, very durable, right? Now they are going to go duller faster than, say, a Japanese knife because it is softer, but they're very, very durable. Now the Japanese knives usually come in somewhere between 61 and 64 on the Rockwell scale. So they are harder. It's a harder steel. They keep their edge longer. But the thing about something that's harder is going to be more brittle. So these are going to chip easier. Now I've never chipped a knife. Now one thing, the reason that I have 2 honing rods is because where I bought my Japanese knives, they use these ceramic honing rods because they said that the steel honing rod is a little bit too aggressive for Japanese steel. It can chip the knife. So they use ceramic honing rods for their knives. And that might be bullshit. I don't know. I might have just bought into it because he said so without doing any more research. I admit I really haven't done any more research on the matter. Anyways, so I've got 2 of them. I've got the ceramic for my Japanese knives, and I've got the steel for my German knives. So you've got your German knives, you've got your Japanese knives, and you've got your Chinese knives. So this is made in China. I thought it was made in America because he was touting it as an American knife brand. Now, I think it's owned by an American company, but They don't make anything in America. These are made in China. And where I thought this was this awesome knife when I first got it, once I learned about the Rockwell hardness scale and all that kind of stuff, I looked it up to see what it was. Now, like I said, German knives are a little bit on the softer side, around 57, 58. Most knives that you can buy down at like Walmart or Target or something like that, they're going to be even softer. They're going to be about a 56, 55 or 56. Turns out this thing is a 54. So it's not even as hard as a knife you can get at Walmart. So all the hoopla and everything that this guy touted it on his YouTube channel, bunch of bullshit, right? I fell for it. But I'm smarter now. So yeah, this was made in China. Now, just because it's Chinese doesn't necessarily mean it's a piece of crap. But their standards aren't as high as Japanese or German standards. Those are the two cornerstones in knife makers. But then this was also made in China. I bought this one because this is a Cory that was designed by a famous Canadian chef, Michael Vega. He's got a Michelin star restaurant in Calgary, I believe. He designed these knives, but he had them made in China. But he also had it made out of Japanese steel. Now that's very common. If you're looking for knives and you come across an advertisement for a knife that says Japanese steel, made out of Japanese steel, they'll tout it that it's Japanese steel because this one is made out of Japanese VG10 core steel, which is a steel made in Japan, one of their better proprietary blends of steel, carbon and steel. I think this comes in at like a 62, 63 on the Rockwell hardness scale. So he used good steel, really well made. I like the design. One big difference between Japanese and German knives. German knives are always going to have a full tang. The blade is made with one piece. It goes all the way from the blade down to the handle. And then the wood is bolted on to the tang, right? So there's no way you're gonna really reeve on this. You're not gonna be able to break that knife because it's all one piece. And that's the main characteristic of a German knife is that it's got that full tang, and they're very well made. Now, another characteristic of German knives are the steel. It's very plain looking, right? It's just a very plain looking steel. There's nothing fancy about a German steel knife, unless they've used Japanese steel, which they do. A lot of German companies actually make a lot of their knives in Japan with Japanese steel. This is a Zwilling, which is a German company that makes this particular knife, which is a Kramer. Kramer is actually an American knife maker. He designs knives, and he designed this knife made in Japan out of Japanese steel, but with a full tang, like a German knife, and then the handle bolted on to the tang. So it's got a little bit of the best of both worlds, right? So yeah, so I bought this Chinese knife. I knew it was made in China when I bought it. It's got the characteristics of a German knife as well, but with the Japanese VG10 steel. It was a beautiful knife. I like it. I like the way it feels in the hand and all that. So I bought that just to support my Canadian brothers. Japanese knives, on the other hand, do not have a full tang. You'll see that has the blade and then it has a handle. And how these blades look, if you took it out of the handle, you'll see a shank down here. And it goes into the wood. They pound the wood handle up into there. So if you're really reeving on these things a lot, you might be able to work that blade out of the handle. You'd really have to do some wonking on it though, because the Japanese use really hard woods and their technique is really good. So you're likely not going to have any problem with it, but it's not unheard of to replace a Japanese wood handle. You can take it down to a knife shop and they will replace the handle for you if you want to. I've had no need to, but I have a lot of knives that I cycle through, so no one knife has a lot of use. Now this is a Shun. Shun is a very well-known Japanese knife brand, and this uses VG Matte. I think this one comes in at a 63, if I remember correctly. So it's a little bit harder than the VG10. But this is a very, very well-known Japanese knife maker. They're still, I'm pretty sure they're still considered handmade, but I think some of it is automated. This is also a Damascus. Damascus is where they fold the steel over. I can't remember how many times, but you can kind of see in the blade how the metal, the steel is folded over and over again, and then they polish it. So Japanese knives do look a little fancier. They're not just plain like German knives. So Japanese knives are a little bit harder. They keep their edge a little bit longer. They are a little bit more brittle, so they can chip. Like I said, I've never had any problems with chipping them, but just so you know, Japanese knives, since they are harder, can chip. That's my mainstream Japanese knife. Then I also have some less commercial, fully handmade Japanese knives. Like this is my Ryuzen. This is actually my favorite knife to use, especially when I'm like cutting tomatoes or whatnot, because this one I think is 64 on the Rockwell hardness scale. I can't remember the exact blend of steel. I could look it up. It's 64. It's also a Damascus steel, so you can see the detail on the blade on that one with the steel getting folded over and over. But this is a very thin, you can't really tell on the camera, but this is a very thin knife. So this is my favorite knife for chopping tomatoes and veggies and all that kind of good stuff, because it is very thin. I also have some thicker ones that I use mainly for meats and whatnot. This is another one of my Wüsthof German knives. It's got some kind of diamond coating on it that's supposed to make it harder, but it's more of a gimmick more than anything, because the actual blade, of course, doesn't have the coating on it. So the actual blade itself is not any harder, but I guess the body of the knife is harder. I just bought it because it's beautiful. I bought all these knives, not because I needed them. I can't remember if it was Sebastian that used to collect throwing knives and hunting knives, or maybe it was Josh or Justin. But somebody had all these throwing knives and hunting knives and whatnot, pocket knives. They were all really cool, and I like them, but I don't use pocket knives or throwing knives or, hunting knives or anything, so I never felt any need to collect knives, those kinds of knives. But once I got into cooking, when I started looking at chef's knives, oh my God, I love chef's knives. Oh man, I mean, look how beautiful that thing is. And you probably, if you ever saw Hell's Kitchen, you've seen that little symbol. But yeah, these things are so beautiful. And once I started looking at knives, I was like, I couldn't just buy one set, so I bought all kinds of them. So this is my main knife collection with my bread knife, my mini chef's knife, my 2 steak knives, and my paring knife. And these are all my German knives. That's my Guide. That's a handmade German knife. Of course, my Wüsthof. Schön. Wüsthof. Oh yeah, that one's my collector's edition. My Corey. And all my Japanese knives. Got another Schön there. And then these are my handmade knives. But anyway, yeah, so this is an 8-inch chef's knife. This is the most standard size knife that you can get. Everybody should have an 8-inch chef's knife on hand. This, I believe, is a 6.5 or 7-inch mini chef's knife. A little bit easier to use, a little bit easier to handle. I probably use this knife. It's probably my first or second most used knife. It's probably between these two that I use the most. I do try to cycle through all my knives, just because I do love them all for different reasons. When I'm just grabbing a knife to do something, cut through an avocado or something, I'll always grab this one. They're just a little bit shorter, a little bit easier to handle. There's a big difference in the way Japanese and German knives also feel in the hand. So it might be important for you to go handle a couple knives to see what it feels like in your hand. The balance might be a little bit different or whatnot. German knives have very beautiful handles and feel very good in the hand. Japanese handles are a little bit more squarish, and they don't put a whole lot of thought into the handle, or maybe they like them that way, I don't know, but they're not as beautiful to me as German knives. I think Germans hold first place in beauty, although the blade themselves, when you look at all the Japanese steel, looks a lot better, but the actual design of German knives to me, I think, is superior. So that's the honing, that's the knives. I think any knife kit should also have a bread knife, a chef's knife, a mini chef's knife or junior chef's knife, however you want to call it, a paring knife, and maybe some steak knives as well. We got 2 steak knives for me, midget, when she gets here. Those are the knives that you're going to use the most. And then a honing rod, whether you need a metal honing rod for a German knife or a ceramic for a Japanese knife, you're going to want all those. So you also mentioned that you wanted to get a butcher's block, a nice butcher's block cutting board. And I'll tell you a couple of caveats about getting a really nice cutting board like this. I got a couple of really nice ones. Thick wood, really nice. I love them, don't get me wrong, I love them, but they are a lot of upkeep, okay? The thing is, if you have a really nice one like this, and then, you know, cut chicken on it, or beef, or any kind of meat, fish, anything like that, anything that's going to, like, spread germs and whatnot, you have to wash it off really well, because they are somewhat porous, so you need to clean them very well to get any bacteria out of them. That can dry them out by using a lot of soap and stuff all the time. It can really dry them out. So you have to apply stuff like this. This is a mixture of beeswax and mineral oil. You can just use mineral oil, but I really like this stuff, the beeswax, to really seal it, because if you don't, like this was my first really nice cutting board that I got. And I just thought, oh, it was a really nice, expensive cutting board, so it's probably going to last for a lifetime, right? Well, no, because even though this is a really hard wood, if you just wash it all the time and you don't treat it afterwards, you're going to start to split. Like you can see right there, it's kind of starting to split. So now I always make sure whenever I wash it, if I wash them a lot, then that weekend or whatever, I go through and recondition it with some beeswax or mineral oil. So there's a lot of upkeep. So what I would suggest, what I really love, these are my favorite, is I use these Epicurean. These Epicurean cutting boards are nice and light. They're extremely durable. I think they're made out of recycled paper and whatnot. But man, I love this thing. So I've already got a couple, because what I do is I'll use one, you know, cut chicken on it or cut beef on it or whatever. And then when I'm done cutting that beef or that chicken on there, then I simply take it over to the sink. And you can clean these things as often as you want to, as hard as you want. Scrub them, scrub them, scrub them. Scrub them clean, scrub all that bacteria right out of them, right after you use it. And the reason I suggest getting 2 of them is because I use these all the time when I'm cooking. So I'll cut my chicken up or whatever on here, and I'll wash this one. Then I'll grab my second one right here. That one was hanging up to dry. I take this one, hang it up to dry right over my sink so it drips right in my sink. And then I've got a new clean one just waiting for me. So yeah, so my recommendation is to get a couple Epicurean cutting boards. You can get a nice one if you want to, show it off when you have guests over, or if you're going to make any cooking videos and whatnot. They are really nice, don't get me wrong, I do love it. But the majority of cutting that I do on my Epicureans. I probably use this mostly for vegetables and whatnot, or if I am making a cooking video, then I use this because it does look nicer. But these are extremely durable. I've had these for a couple of years now, and I mean, they're really no worse for wear. They don't bend like I kind of thought, because they rest on these rubber things on there that they would kind of start sagging over time. They don't. They're very, very durable. They're very, very sturdy. I love them, and they're so easy to clean, hang them and dry, bada bing. So that would be my recommendation for the cutting boards, the Epicureans. The knives, that's more of a decision to make between, do you want something more durable? Do you want something a little harder that maybe keeps this edge a little bit longer? Either way, if you're honing it every day and get into sharpening, I can show you the sharpening later, or you can also take it to any knife shop. They'll sharpen them for you if you don't really feel like doing that. So the most important thing to know is just to keep them honed, keep them sharpened every once in a while, because they say the most dangerous tool in the kitchen is a dull knife. So anyways, Elise, I hope this helped, and I love and miss you.